Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. Over these past few years, I received plenty of common questions. Things like, why don't I run tubeless? Or why don't I get back into crit races? Two things that I have done this season. But one of the most common questions that I receive on this channel is, why am I running a size 56 frame with a 130 or 140 mil length stem? Why don't I move up to a size 58 frame set and drop down to say like a 120 millimeter length crank? So in this video, guys, this is my new long-term road bike for the summer. Shout out to Cycling Limited. We have here this lovely Ventum NS1 all-around road bike in a size 58. So in this video, we're going to be discussing some of the details on here, the frame itself, and then most importantly, what my experience has been like moving up to a size 58 down from a size 56. Huge shout out to Cycle Limited for sending me out this bike for the summertime. So without further ado, let's begin. Alrighty, folks, I wanted to give you a visual side-by-side comparison of my Ventum NS1 compared to my primary road bike and my race bike, my Tavelo Aero. Now, the Tavelo Aero is a size 56. It actually is the longest as far as reach goes for any size 56 frame set that I have featured on this channel so far. But as far as the overall bike fit, I have everything on this Aero absolutely locked in. So we have a size 56 frame, and then the length of the stem is 130. And as far as the spacers go, I'm using about 15 millimeters of spacer. So that kind of gives you an idea of what this bike looks like. If you were to go over to Geometry Geeks, you would see that the bottom bracket height for both of these frames are basically the same. Now, moving over to the Ventum NS1, this is one size up. This is a size 58. So in order to get everything as close as possible as far as the reach and bike fit goes, as you guys can see, I had to literally slam the integrated cockpit as low as it could go. And so far, it's been really good. Now, the stem length on this cockpit is only 120 because the Ventum NS1 is probably a few millimeters longer than the Tavelo Aero in a comparable size 56. So this is just how it looks all together. Now, I bring this up because the argument that people always make on my channel is, why are you using such long stems? Why don't you size up to a size 58 and get a shorter stem? And so this is really just a classic case of what I was talking about. So as you can see, despite the fact I've gone up one size and despite the fact that I've literally slammed the stem, for all intent and purposes, the cockpits are basically the same. But as you guys can see clearly, the size 58 slammed cockpit is just about, I would say about 4 to 5 millimeters taller in height compared to the Tavelo Aero. And especially being in the drops, obviously I much prefer the lower drop on the drops for the Tavelo Aero, but I would say in the hoods, they're both more or less comparable. And just overall, the overall length and reach for both bikes are basically the same. There's just a little bit more drops in the Tavelo Aero. Huge thank you to Cycle Limited for lending me this Ventum NS1 for the summer. Cycle Limited is your one-stop shop for new and certified pre-owned bikes and gear at great prices. They work directly with brands to offer competitive deals on road, MTB, gravel, and components. Every certified pre-owned bike is professionally inspected, tuned, and ready to ride. Cycle Limited is a family-owned business, and again, no middleman, which enables them to offer great prices. I found this pre-owned Ventum NS1 on their website in a size 58, SRAM Force E-Tap with a power meter, 170 millimeter length cranks, and an internal cockpit in a 120 millimeter length stem and 38 centimeter width. Perfect for me. All I did was swap the wheels and the saddle. The bike was shipped out the same business day and came very well packaged. It only took me about 30 minutes to get the bike up and running, and I was really impressed with the care that Cycle Limited took both in the packaging and that the bike looked exactly as it did on the website listing. Cycle Limited offers hassle-free returns and international shipping is coming soon. I've been working with Cycle Limited since my Tantan GR201 gravel bike, where they sent me out the SRAM Eagle GX rear derailleur and cassette. And I do have a code for you guys to receive $75 off of your purchases of $500 or more with the discount code PATTY75. Once again, huge thank you to Cycle Limited, and be sure to check out their website for some killer deals for the summertime. we need to talk about the elephant in the room regarding what Ventum is and what Ventum is not. So by and large, Ventum is a marketing company that contracts out their design, their engineering, as well as the manufacturing somewhere in the Far East. And based on some of the design elements on this frame, my assumption is the frames are coming from China, along with all the other frames that I have featured on this channel in the past. Now, this concept of contracting everything out to the Far East, this isn't inherently a bad idea. I mean, companies like Specialized, they do the same exact thing, as well as some of the other larger Western brands on the market today. Basically, this is just really a cost-effective way to provide bikes to the market. And so for Ventum, basically what they're doing is they're sort of taking all the risks and allowing the consumer to have one of these type of frames without taking on the risk of ordering a frame directly from China. Now, speaking of China in this frame, this is not an open mold frame. It has a lot of design elements and cues that look similar to like a Tarmac SO7. And I'm sure if you were to scour the internet or even just look at some of my older videos, one could easily make the argument that this is in fact an open mold frame. However, based on my own personal research on the brand, again, this is not an open mold frame. And my assumption too is Ventum is working with these factories in the Far East to have their own particular carbon layup as well. And so with this frame, you're getting T47, you're getting tire clearance for 35C tires, you have a universal derailleur hanger out back. So you're getting all these modern features and touches that you would expect at this price point. So I appreciate what Ventum is trying to do here. I don't think this frame is going to be for every consumer on the market today, but if you find yourself in that camp where you don't want to spend the money on going with a full-on popular Western brand like a Specialized, but maybe you don't want to spend as little as say something like $600 to $1,000 on an open mold OEM frame from China, then I think this can be a nice middle ground for consumers out there because Ventum is a known brand these days and they seem to be offering up something just a little bit more than you would get with some of the larger camps on the market today. Now, there is 2 pros and 2 cons with going to a size 58. So the first pro is being that the stack height is a little bit taller compared to my Tavello Aero. That means, as I mentioned earlier, I'm able to slam the stem as low as it goes. So what this means is you should have a more connect and direct feeling to the road as far as steering goes, being that you aren't using a couple of plastic spacers underneath. Everything should be a little bit more stiff and a little bit more direct. The second pro is since I am using a shorter stem, because the overall reach of the frame is longer than on a Tavello, that means that I only need a 120 millimeter length stem for this one-piece cockpit. This is a size and a spec that is common across all bike brands, so this is really easy to source versus trying to find a 130. So by having just a slightly shorter stem or cockpit overall, that means that the steering inputs should be a little bit more predictable, a little bit quicker, and a little bit less lazy compared to using a longer stem. This can be good or bad depending on where you live, where you ride your bike, if you live in the hills, where you're descending, if you're bombing into an apex in a corner. All these things play into effect, but the reality is having this 120 stem is probably more preferable for most consumers. Now, the 2 cons I can think of is, number one is, again, being that this is a bigger frame, that means that the overall standover height is a little bit taller than I'm used to. Now, I would say that if you look at the geometry on this size 58 Ventum NS1, this is probably the absolute limit as far as how high I would be comfortable with on a day-to-day basis with the standover height. I want to say it's maybe like 810 or maybe 820 millimeters tall, but when I'm standing at a traffic light, this top tube is almost hitting, my groin area, something you don't really want. So just keep that in mind. And then the second con is the fact that, again, because this is a bigger frame, it's taller, that means that there is less of the carbon seat post sticking out, meaning that there is less flex, less deflections as far as comfort goes. So you're going to feel a little bit more of the bumps and rough pavement. But the good news is, since I'm running tubeless tires on here and these are on the wider side, a lot of that stiffness and potential discomfort can easily be mitigated. So what has my experience been like with this bike moving up to a size 58 from a size 56? What I've noticed is just the overall comfort, stability, steering, all of these things together as an in total package and system just feels a lot more comfortable. because the wheelbase is longer overall, it's probably like 5 to 6 millimeters longer in wheelbase versus a size 56. I just feel a lot more stable and confident in this bike in this size, especially when I get up to those prescribed speeds. I've also noticed too, when it comes to the steering, because this is a shorter steerer, it's a 120 versus like a 130 or a 140, the steering is just a little bit quicker, a little bit more predictable, and a lot less lazy versus some of the longer stems. Now, this could be a good or bad thing depending on your sort of riding style, but for myself, I do like the steering inputs on this 120 millimeter length stem. The main noticeable changes that I feel moving up to this size 58 has been just the overall balance of myself on this bike. Because the bike is longer with the longer wheelbase, and because I'm using a shorter stem, I just feel more of an equal weight balance on both the front and the rear. Typically, when you are running these longer stems, say like a 130 or 140, you'll have more of your weight on the front end. That could be a good or bad thing. It just really depends on your riding style and where you ride. But for myself, I just feel a little bit more stretched out, which is exactly what I wanted. But just the overall weight distribution, in my opinion, it's more closer to 50-50 versus being like 60-40 in either direction. But so far, I've been really liking this larger frame. Now, of course, one of the downsides to having this is due to the fact that because I had to slam the stem, and I do have like maybe 10 millimeters of spacers to work with, is when it comes to resale value. Now, if you're someone that likes to really slam your stem, this could be an issue, but I think for most consumers using their bikes for long terms, this really shouldn't be an issue. One other thing that you'll need to consider when it comes to changing your frame size has to do with the length of your cranks. So I originally started off with 172.5 length cranks, and now I am down to 170 mil cranks. And so because of that, I've had to raise the saddle and also raise the front end a little bit on my size 56. So if you decide to move to shorter cranks, what that means is if you are running a smaller frame, you're going to have to also increase the stack height of that as well. And so this is another area where having a larger frame could come into play, because if I choose to go down to 165 millimeter length cranks, that means that I'll have more wiggle room because I'll be able to raise the front end of this just a little bit without having to run, say, 25 to 30 mils of spacers should I be running a size 56 frame. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. Overall, this experience moving with the size 58 frame set and just a complete bike overall has been a success. I'm really been enjoying this bike so far. I will of course continue to put it through its paces throughout the summertime, but as it is right now, I don't really see any downsides moving up to a size 58 from a 56. It's comfortable. I feel really stable and planted on this bike at speed, and just overall, my overall sort of weight balance on here feels really locked in and really comfortable. Questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.